The shuttle docked with a soft hiss, and Park stepped onto Nexus 7 for the first time. The space station was massive, a ring of metal and glass spinning slowly around a distant star. Thousands of beings walked through its corridors. None of them were human. Was 19 years old. She had black hair tied back in a tight bun and dark brown eyes that watched everything carefully. She was not tall. Most of the aliens around her stood 2 or 3 meters high. She barely reached 1.6 meters, but she walked with her back straight and her head up, carrying her single bag over her shoulder. The Galactic Union Academy had never accepted a human before. Earth had only made contact with alien life 5 years ago, and most species still did not know what to think of humans. They knew only one thing for certain. Humans came from a Class 12. In the galactic classification system, planets were ranked by how dangerous they were. Class 1 was safe and calm. Class 12 was the worst. Earth had everything. High gravity that crushed bones. An atmosphere filled with oxygen which was poison to many species. Extreme temperatures that swung from burning heat to freezing cold. And predators. So many predators. The other species could not understand how anything intelligent had survived on such a world. They called humans gravity apes and oxygen breathers behind their backs. Some called them worse things to their faces. Heard the whispers as she walked to the registration desk. She pretended not to notice. The Academy trained officers for the Union's peacekeeping fleet. Cadets came from over 40 different species to learn tactics, law, combat, and leadership. Graduation meant a commission on a starship, a chance to see the galaxy and keep the peace between worlds. It was everything had dreamed of since she was a child watching the stars from her grandmother's farm in Provence. Her grandmother had been a soldier once, special forces. She had taught many things before she died: how to fight, how to stay calm when others panicked, how to watch and wait and strike only when necessary. Violence is a tool, her grandmother had said, her weathered hands wrapped around a cup of tea. Use it wisely and it will save your life. Use it foolishly and it will destroy everything you love. Thought of those words as a tall alien blocked her path. The alien was a reptilian species with scales the color of old copper. He wore the uniform of an instructor, and his eyes were cold and yellow. His neck frill extended slightly as he looked down at her. "You are the human," he said. His voice came through a translator device on his collar, turning his clicks and hisses into words she could understand. "Yes, sir. Cadet Park, reporting for orientation." "I am instructor. I run the unarmed combat program." He leaned closer. "I opposed your admission. Earth creatures do not belong here. You rely on instinct, not skill, brute force, not technique." Kept her expression neutral. "I look forward to proving otherwise, sir." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We shall see." He walked away and continued to the registration desk. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. She had expected this. She had prepared for this. Her dormitory assignment placed her with a named. Were slender beings with lavender skin and 4 arms. They had large compound eyes that reflected light like jewels. Was already in the room when arrived, and she immediately pressed herself against the far wall. "Hello," said carefully. I guess we are." Santeni twitched nervously. "You are the human." "Yes." Set down her bag. "Yes, but I am not going to hurt you, I promise." Did not move from the wall. "The files say your species hunts by chasing prey until their hearts give out, that you can run for days without stopping, that your bones are dense and your muscles are strong and your immune system attacks everything, even your own body sometimes." "Some of that is true," admitted, "but I am not hunting you. I'm just trying to get through school like everyone else." Said nothing. That night she slept in the corner of the room, as far from as possible. The first weeks were hard. Classes were demanding. Tactical theory required memorizing thousands of battle formations from dozens of species. Interstellar law had so many rules that head hurt from studying. Zero-gravity combat simulations made her sick until her body adjusted. But the hardest part was the other cadets. They stared at her in the halls. They whispered when she walked past. In the cafeteria, they left empty seats around her, as if her presence might be contagious. A few were brave enough to insult her directly. "Gravity ape," a cadet hissed one day, her gray skin wrinkling with disgust. "Go back to your death rock." Kept walking. She did not respond. Her grandmother had taught her that anger was a fire and fires needed fuel. If she gave them nothing, they would burn themselves out. But some fires were fed by others. Instructor made his hatred clear from the first combat class. He called on constantly, forcing her to demonstrate techniques against larger opponents. He criticized everything she did. When she succeeded, he said she was lucky. When she struggled, he said it proved humans were inferior. One day he put her against a named. Were massive creatures, nearly 3 meters tall with 4 thick arms, outweighed by at least 100 kilograms. The other cadets watched with interest, expecting to see the human crushed. The match began. Charged, confident in his size and strength, did not try to block him. She moved to the side, letting his momentum carry him past her. She watched his footwork, his balance, the way he shifted his weight. He was strong, but he was slow. He expected opponents to fight him head-on. When he turned and charged again, was ready. She stepped inside his reach, grabbed his arm, and used his own force against him. A twist, a pull, and was on the ground, staring up at the ceiling in confusion. The room went silent. His yellow eyes narrowed. Again. Helped up, they fought again. She won again. They fought a third time. She won a third time. "Enough," said, his voice tight with anger. Class dismissed. As the cadets filed out, felt their eyes on her. Some were surprised. Some were impressed. But many were angry, their pride wounded by what they had seen. She had made enemies today. She knew that. But she also knew that she could not hide forever. She was human. She was and she had every right to be here. That night was still in her corner, but she spoke for the first time in days. "How did you do that?" she asked quietly. "Is one of the strongest cadets in our year." Lay on her bed, staring at the metal ceiling. Strength is not everything. Speed is not everything. What matters is reading your opponent, understanding how they move, how they think, and then using that knowledge against them. That sounds like something a predator would say. Smiled slightly. "Maybe, but I am not your predator, I am just your." His antennae twitched. She did not respond, but the next morning she slept a little closer to the center of the room. 3 months passed at the academy, fell into a routine, wake early, exercise, classes, study, sleep, repeat. She kept her head down and her mouth shut. She did her work and ignored the insults. She was not here to make friends, she was here to graduate. But trouble was coming for her, whether she wanted it or not. It started with small things. Her locker was broken into twice. Someone poured a foul-smelling liquid on her uniform. Her assignments disappeared from the system and she had to redo them. Each time, there was no evidence of who was responsible. Each time, the academy staff shrugged and told her to be more careful. Knew who was behind it. A young with green scales and a permanent sneer on his face. He was instructor's nephew, and he had made his hatred of humans very clear. He never did anything himself. He was too smart for that, but his friends were always nearby when something went wrong. The friends were easy to identify, and were twins from the species. They were thin and wiry, with gray skin and 6-fingered hands that ended in sharp claws. They had grown up on a high-gravity moon and believed they were stronger than most other species. They followed everywhere like shadows. The fourth member of the group was, alike but smaller and meaner. He had lost one of his 4 arms in an accident years ago, and it had left him bitter and angry. He wanted to prove himself through violence and gave him plenty of chances. Watched them carefully. She memorized their patterns. She knew when they ate, when they trained, when they slept. She knew which corridors they used and which ones they avoided. Knowledge was power, her grandmother had taught her. Know your enemy better than they know themselves. But knowing was not enough to stop what was coming. The message arrived on her personal at midnight. It had no sender name, no return address, just a few words that made her blood run cold. Practical Combat Lab 7200 hours. Come alone or your pay's the price. Read the message 3 times. She looked across the room at who was sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. The had finally started to relax around her. She was even starting to smile sometimes. Could not let anything happen to her. She thought about reporting the message. But to whom? Instructor would probably congratulate whoever sent it. The Academy Security Office had ignored her complaints before, and if she reported it and nothing was done, would know she was afraid. He would just try again more carefully next time. No, there was only one way to end this. Got dressed in the dark. She wore her training clothes, loose and flexible. She tied her hair back tight so no one could grab it. She did not bring any weapons. The Academy had strict rules about weapons, and she would not give them any excuse to expel her. She slipped out of the dormitory at 1:45. The corridors were dim, lit only by emergency lights. Most of the station was asleep. Her footsteps made no sound on the metal floor. She had learned to walk quietly as a child, moving through the forests near her grandmother's farm without disturbing the animals. Lab 7 was in an old section of the academy, a place used for storage more than training. The lights were off when she arrived. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and she stepped inside. Darkness, silence, the smell of recycled air and old sweat. Then the lights came on, bright and sudden, and saw them. 4 figures stood in a loose half-circle. In the center, his green scales shining under the harsh lights, and on his left their claws extended. On his right, cracking the knuckles of his 3 remaining hands. "You actually came," said. His translator made his voice sound pleased. "I thought we're supposed to be smart." Stood still. Her hands hung loose at her sides. Her eyes moved slowly, taking in everything. The distance to each opponent, the placement of obstacles, the location of exits, the way they shifted their weight, revealing their fighting stances. 4 against 1, she said calmly. "This is what you call civilized." Neck frill extended in a display of dominance. "This is what I call insurance. You embarrassed my uncle. You embarrassed me. You made our species look weak in front of everyone. Tonight, we teach you where belong." "And where is that?" "On the floor, begging for mercy." Hissed something in her native language. Her brother laughed, a harsh clicking sound. "She says she wants to hear you scream," translated. "The lab is soundproofed. We chose it specifically. No one will come. No one will help you. You are alone." Felt her heartbeat steady. Fear was there, somewhere deep in her chest, but it was distant now. Her grandmother's training was taking over. Her mind was becoming clear. Her body was becoming ready. She looked at each of them in turn, was confident but slow. His scales were thick, but they protected his body, not his weak points, and were fast and coordinated, but they relied on their claws too much. Was strong, but his missing arm affected his balance. 4 opponents, 4 sets of weaknesses, 4 ways to win. "Last chance," said quietly. "Walk away now, and we can pretend this never happened." Laughed. The sound was ugly and full of hate. "The human is giving us a chance to retreat. How generous, how noble." He stepped forward, his claws clicking on the floor. "Let me show you what I think of your generosity." He lunged. Did not move. Not yet. She watched his shoulder drop, watched his weight shift to his front leg, watched his arm pull back for the strike. She read his attack before it happened, just as her grandmother had taught her. Time seemed to slow down. In her mind, she heard the old woman's voice, calm and steady. "When violence comes for you, do not hesitate. Hesitation is death. Move first, move fast, move to end it." His claw swept toward her throat. Moved. And everything changed. The fight lasted 12 seconds. Later, when the security footage was reviewed by military experts from a dozen worlds, they would slow it down frame by frame. They would study every movement, every strike, every decision. They would write reports and hold briefings and argue about what they had witnessed. But in the moment, there was only chaos and violence, and the sound of bodies hitting the floor. Attacked first, he was fast for his clawed hand cutting through the air towards throat. If it connected, it would tear her open. She would bleed out on the floor of Lab 7, and no one would know what happened until morning. But it did not connect. Was already moving. She had read his attack before he launched it, seen the shift in his shoulder that revealed his target. She stepped to the left, just enough to let his claw pass by her face. She felt the wind of it brush her cheek. In the same motion, she struck. Her palm hit the soft spot under his jaw. It was a pressure point that shared with several other reptilian species. The nerves there connected directly to the brain. A hard enough strike would overwhelm them, sending a shock through the whole system. His yellow eyes went wide. Then they rolled back in his head. His legs gave out beneath him. He collapsed to the floor, unconscious before he even knew what had happened. 1 second had passed. The twins reacted instantly, and had trained together since childhood. They fought as a single unit, one going high while the other went low. Their coordination was perfect. Their claws were sharp. They had taken down opponents twice their size with this technique. Leaped forward, her claws aimed its face. At the same moment, dropped low and swept toward her legs, trying to knock her off balance. If they hit together, she would have no way to defend herself. Did not try to block. Blocking against claws was a losing strategy. Instead, she dropped into a roll, her body moving under strike while her legs pulled away from sweep. She hit the ground and kept moving, coming up behind before he could turn around. Her boot caught his knee from the side. The joint bent in a direction it was never meant to bend. There was a crack, loud and sharp, and screamed. He fell, clutching his leg, his gray face twisted in agony. 4 seconds had passed. Spun around, her compound eyes blazing with rage. Her brother was down. Her formation was broken. She should have retreated, reassessed, planned a new approach, but anger made her reckless. She charged at with both arms extended, all 6 claws ready to tear. Stepped inside her reach. It was counterintuitive. Every instinct said to run from claws to create distance, but claws were weapons of range. Up close, they were useless, and up close was very dangerous. An elbow to the center of his chest. The blow drove the air from her lungs. A palm strike to her throat, not hard enough to crush her windpipe but hard enough to stun her. Then grabbed her arm, turned her hips and threw. Hit the floor hard. Her head bounced off the metal surface with a dull thud. Her eyes went unfocused. Her body went limp. 7 seconds had passed. Now only remained. They had not charged like the others. He had watched the fight unfold, seen his allies fall one by one. He was not stupid. He knew that something had gone very wrong with their plan. But he was also proud. Running would mean admitting defeat. It would mean admitting that a human, a tiny creature from a death rock on the edge of known space, had beaten them. He could not accept that. He circled slowly, his 3 arms raised in a defensive posture. His muscles were thick and powerful. Each of his fists could crush bone with a single punch. If he grabbed her, he could tear her apart. "You are fast," he said, his voice low and careful. "But speed will only take you so far. I am stronger than any human." Watched him move. She noted the way he favored his left side, compensating for his missing arm. She saw the tension in his shoulders, the anger behind his eyes. He was scared, but his pride would not let him show it. "Probably," she agreed, "but strength is not everything." She moved toward him. Blinked in surprise. He had expected her to run, to try to wear him down with distance and speed. Instead, she was coming straight at him. It made no sense. He threw a punch, a massive haymaker that would have shattered her skull if it connected, but ducked under it easily. She had seen his shoulder tense, had known where the blow would go before he even threw it. She stepped inside his guard and drove her knee into his inner thigh. There was a nerve cluster there, a weakness that shared with many species. The pain was instant and overwhelming. His leg buckled. As he stumbled, grabbed his arm. She twisted, using his own weight against him. He was heavy, but momentum did not care about weight. He was off balance, falling, unable to stop himself. She guided his fall, controlling it. He hit the ground face first, and before he could recover, she had his arm locked behind his back. She applied pressure to the shoulder joint, pushing it to the edge of its range of motion. "Yield," she said calmly. Struggled, he was strong enough to throw her off if he could get leverage, but she had positioned herself perfectly. Every time he moved, she adjusted. Every time he pushed, she pulled. The pain in his shoulder grew worse and worse. "Yield," she said again. He tried one more time to break free. She applied more pressure. Something in his shoulder made a popping sound. He screamed. "I yield." The words came out desperate and broken. "I yield, stop, please." She released him and stepped back. 12 seconds had passed. Stood in the center of the room, breathing hard but steady. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were not shaking. Around her, 4 bodies lay on the floor. Was unconscious, a dark bruise already forming on his jaw. Was curled up in a ball, crying and holding his destroyed knee. Was struggling to breathe, her eyes staring at nothing. Was cradling his dislocated shoulder, tears streaming down his face. The fight was over. Walked to the emergency panel on the wall. She pressed the medical alert button and waited for the connection to establish. "This is Cadet Park," she said, her voice calm and clear. "I am in Practical Combat Lab 7. There are 4 cadets here who need immediate medical attention. I am unharmed." She ended the call. Then she sat down on the floor, crossed her legs, and waited for help to arrive. The security team found her like that 10 minutes later. She had not moved. She had not tried to run or hide or make excuses. She just sat there, surrounded by her fallen attackers, waiting to face whatever came next. One of the security officers, a veteran from a species did not recognize, looked at the scene with wide eyes. He looked at the 4 injured cadets. He looked at the small human sitting calmly in the middle of it all. "What happened here?" he asked. Met his eyes. "They tried to hurt me, I stopped them." The officer stared at her for a long moment. Then he slowly nodded. "Right," he said quietly, "I guess you did." The investigation lasted 6 days. Was confined to her quarters during the inquiry. She could not go to class. She could not go to the cafeteria. She could only leave her room for essential reasons, and even then, a security officer followed her everywhere. She spent most of her time reading, exercising, and thinking. She had expected consequences. She had not expected this much attention. The academy was in chaos. A human cadet had put 4 students in the medical bay. The security footage had been classified, but somehow everyone knew what had happened. 12 seconds, 4 attackers, 1 human. Brought her meals and news from the outside world. "The whole station is talking about it," the whispered on the 3rd day. Her antennae were standing straight up, which had learned meant excitement. "Someone leaked the footage to the Academy network. Everyone has seen it." Closed her eyes. "Great, more attention." "You do not understand. They are not laughing at you. They are afraid of you." Paused, but also impressed. "Some of the older cadets are saying it was the most efficient combat they have ever seen. 12 seconds against 4 trained opponents, without weapons, without armor, without anything but your body. I was just trying to survive." That is what scares them. Sat on the edge of her bed. Her compound eyes reflected the dim light of the room. I have been reading about humans since the fight, about your world, about your history. And your species has been at war with itself for thousands of years. You have fought and killed and survived things that would have destroyed most civilizations. Your planet tried to kill you with ice ages and volcanoes and diseases and predators. And you won. You beat all of it. She shook her head slowly. The other species call Earth a death world, but I think that is wrong. Earth is a survival world, and your people are survivors. Did not know what to say. She had never thought of it that way. The news from outside got more complicated as the days passed. The ambassador had filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Union Council. He demanded that be expelled and sent back to Earth. He called her dangerous, violent, and unfit for civilized society. But the human embassy fought back. They released the threatening message that had received. They provided evidence of instructors' harassment. They showed that and his friends had planned the attack for weeks. The incident became a diplomatic crisis. On the 6th day, was summoned to appear before the Academy Board. The hearing chamber was a large circular room with seats arranged in a ring. 7 board members sat above her, representing different species and factions within the Union. Among them was a general with cold eyes, a trade representative who would not look at her, and a commander who seemed more curious than angry. There was also a human woman in a crisp diplomatic uniform. Her nameplate said Ambassador O. She had gray hair and calm eyes, and the kind of quiet confidence that came from decades of experience. The head of the board was Admiral, an ancient being from a species called the. His body was covered in markings that glowed softly in the dim light. His voice was deep and slow. Cadet Park, you stand accused of excessive force against fellow cadets. You are accused of conduct unbecoming an officer. You are accused of violating Academy combat protocols. How do you respond to these charges? Stood straight, her hands clasped behind her back. With respect, Admiral, I responded to an attack with the force necessary to stop it. 4 armed opponents ambushed me in an isolated location after threatening my. I defended myself and immediately called for medical help. I did not use more force than necessary. The general spoke up, his voice sharp. Cadet suffered a serious brain injury. Cadet requires surgery to repair his knee. You call this necessary force? Both injuries will heal completely, replied. If I had used excessive force, they would not have survived. The room went quiet. The general's scales darkened with anger, but he said nothing. Ambassador O leaned forward. The board has reviewed the security footage carefully. Cadet Park's account is accurate. She gave her attackers multiple chances to withdraw. She used a minimum of force to neutralize each threat. Most importantly, she deliberately avoided lethal techniques when she clearly had the opportunity to use them. Admiral turned to her. You are suggesting she held back. I am stating it as fact. Human military experts who reviewed the footage estimate that a soldier with her apparent training could have killed all 4 attackers in the same amount of time. She chose not to. The ambassador's voice was calm and steady. Earth is a Class 12 world. Humans evolved to hunt, fight, and survive in conditions that would kill most species in this room. Cadet Park is not special among her people. She is average, and she showed mercy. The representative finally spoke. This is propaganda. Humans have only been in contact with the Union for 5 years. How can we trust anything they say about their own capabilities? Because the evidence supports it. Ambassador O pressed a button on her console. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, showing biological data. Human bone density is 40% higher than the galactic average. Their muscle efficiency exceeds most known species. They can regulate their body temperature, heal from injuries that would be fatal to others, and continue functioning through pain that would incapacitate most beings. They are, by any objective measure, one of the most physically capable species in known space. She let that sink in before continuing. And yet Cadet Park did not kill anyone. She did not permanently maim anyone. She stopped the threat and called for help. If that is not restraint, I do not know what is. The board deliberated for 3 hours. Waited in a small room nearby. She could not sit still. She paced back and forth, trying not to think about what would happen if they ruled against her. Expulsion. Shame. A return to Earth with nothing to show for her years of work. Finally, the door opened. A security officer gestured for her to return to the chamber. Admiral was standing when she entered. His glowing markings pulsed slowly. Cadet Park. After careful review of the evidence, this board finds you not guilty of all charges. The evidence clearly shows that you acted in self-defense against a coordinated attack. The 4 cadets responsible for this attack, and are hereby expelled from the academy. Instructor is suspended pending a full review of his conduct. Let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. However, the Admiral continued, this incident has raised concerns about integration of species into Union institutions. We will be developing new protocols to address these concerns. You are expected to cooperate fully with this process. Yes, Admiral. You are dismissed. Bowed slightly and turned to leave. As she walked through the door, Ambassador O fell into step beside her. You handled that well, the older woman said quietly. I just told the truth. The truth, carefully presented, that is a skill. They walked in silence for a moment. You have good instincts, Cadet, not just for combat. The diplomatic service could use someone like you. I joined to be a pilot. Plans change. Ambassador O handed her a small data chip. My direct contact. When you are ready to think about your future, call me. Took the chip. Thank you, Ambassador. The older woman smiled. Thank me by making something of yourself. You have just shown the galaxy what humans can do. Now show them what humans can become. She walked away, leaving alone in the corridor. For the first time in 6 days, allowed herself to smile. The footage spread across the galaxy like fire. Someone had leaked the security recording from Lab 7 beyond the Academy network. Within days, it was being analyzed by military academies on 100 worlds. Within weeks, it had become the most watched combat footage in Union history. 12 seconds, 4 trained attackers, 1 small human female who moved like water and struck like lightning. Military experts slowed it down frame by frame. They studied every movement, every decision. They wrote papers about her technique, her efficiency, her ability to read her opponents before they even moved. Some called it instinct. Others called it predator awareness. A few called it something else entirely. They called it terrifying. For 5 years, humans had been a footnote in galactic affairs, a newly discovered species from an inconvenient world, tolerated but not respected, watched but not feared. The incident in Lab 7 changed everything. On Nexus 7, life became very different. Cadets who had avoided her now nodded respectfully when she passed in the corridors. They did not speak to her often, but the insults had stopped. The whispers were different now. Not mocking, not cruel, just careful. Those who had mocked her the loudest became the quietest. They did not meet her eyes anymore. They stepped aside when she walked toward them. They found excuses to be elsewhere when she entered a room. Did not know how to feel about that. She had not wanted to be feared. She had just wanted to survive. But some things changed for the better. Instructors began calling on her to demonstrate techniques in class, not to humiliate her, as had done, but because she was genuinely skilled. They asked her questions about human combat methods, human training philosophies, human ways of thinking about violence. Your species approaches conflict differently, one instructor told her after class. He was a like admiral, his body marked with glowing lines. Most species see combat as a contest of strength or speed. Humans see it as a problem to be solved. You analyze, adapt, overcome. It is very effective. It is how we survived, said simply. Our world did not allow for anything else. The instructor nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why you are still here. The biggest change was in her dormitory. No longer slept in the corner. She no longer flinched when moved too quickly. She no longer watched her with fear in her compound eyes. One night, about a month after the hearing, spoke while they were both lying in the dark. I was wrong about you. Turned her head. What do you mean? When you first arrived, I thought you were a monster, a predator wearing a person's skin. I thought you would hurt me. I thought it was only a matter of time. Paused. But I was wrong. You are not a mindless hunter. You are controlled, patient. You choose when to fight and when to walk away. That is what my grandmother taught me, said softly. Violence is a tool. Use it wisely and it will save your life. Use it foolishly and it will destroy everything you love. Your grandmother sounds wise. She was. She died a few years ago, but I still hear her voice sometimes, especially when things get hard. Was quiet for a moment, then she said something that surprised. I am glad you are mine. Smiled in the darkness. I am glad too. The years that followed were not easy, but they were good. Graduated at the top of her class. She was the first human to earn a commission in the Union peacekeeping fleet. She served on 3 different ships, learning from commanders of a dozen species, proving herself over and over again. She never forgot Ambassador O's offer. Eventually she took it. The diplomatic service needed people who could talk and fight equally well, could do both. She negotiated treaties between hostile factions. She prevented wars before they started. She walked into dangerous situations with nothing but her words and her training, and walked out with peace agreements signed. When words failed, she had other options, but she rarely needed them. Most beings, once they learned who she was, became very interested in finding a peaceful solution. Her reputation grew. The human who had won a 4-on-1 fight in 12 seconds. The who spoke softly but carried the weight of her planet behind every word. The diplomat who always seemed to know what her opponents would do before they did it. Some called her dangerous. Some called her remarkable. A few called her the most effective negotiator in Union history. Called herself lucky. But she knew it was more than luck. It was everything her grandmother had taught her. It was the survival instinct of a species that had clawed its way up from the mud of a death world. It was the human ability to adapt, to learn, to overcome. Years after the incident, returned to Nexus 7 to give a lecture to new cadets. The hall was packed. Beings from 40 different species had come to hear the famous human speak. She stood at the front of the room, older now, gray starting to appear in her black hair. She looked out at the young faces watching her and remembered being one of them. You have probably heard stories about me, she began. Some of them are true, some of them are exaggerated, but there is one thing I want you to understand about that night in Lab 7. She paused, making sure she had their attention. I did not win because I was stronger than my attackers. I did not win because I was faster. I won because I understood something that they did not. She leaned forward. The fight is not won by the biggest or the quickest. It is won by the one who is most prepared, the one who has studied their enemy, the one who knows when to fight and when to wait, the one who controls themselves before they try to control the situation. A hand went up. A young cadet, probably reminded of what his species had faced that night. Cadet Park, Ambassador Park, is it true that you could have killed them all? Looked at him for a long moment. Yes. The room went very quiet. And why didn't you? Because death is permanent. Because they were young and stupid and did not deserve to die for being young and stupid. Because my grandmother taught me that violence is a tool, not an identity. She straightened. I am a human. I come from a death world. My ancestors hunted and fought and survived things that would have destroyed most species. That capacity for violence is part of me. It will always be part of me. She looked around the room, meeting as many eyes as she could. But it does not define me, And it does not have to define any of you. We are more than our worst capabilities. We are more than what we can destroy. We are what we choose to build. The lecture lasted 2 hours. Afterward, dozens of cadets came forward to ask questions, to shake her hand, to thank her. Among them was a young human woman who reminded of herself 20 years ago. Small, determined, a little afraid but refusing to show it. "Ambassador Park," the young woman said, "I just wanted to say thank you for showing us that we belong here." Smiled and put a hand on her shoulder. "You always belonged here. It just took the galaxy a little while to realize it." She walked out of the academy that evening as the station's lights dimmed for the night cycle. Behind her, the young cadets returned to their dorms, their heads full of dreams about the future. Ahead of her, the stars waited. And somewhere in the official records of the Galactic Union Academy, there was a file labeled Disciplinary Matter 7842. But no one called it that. They called it the 12-second lesson. And it was never forgotten.